Like your daily meal that is exclusive to you, welcome to another News Central exclusive that brings you closer to matters and people. I have the rare honor of sitting down with the Special Advisor on Public Communications and Orientation to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Dr. Sunday Dar, CON. Welcome to the show, Dr. Dari. It's an honor to have you in our midst.
Absolutely.
Now, before we get into the conversation, for those of us in journalism, Dr. Sunday Dar is not a new name to us, as he is a distinguished career journalist who has served as the chief of the Hausa Service Africa Division at the Voice of America. Now, he actually began his journalism career about 3 decades ago by working as a correspondent for The Nation magazine in New York and as a production editor for the European-backed Fourth Estate magazine during the Nigerian military interregnum. He was also part of the founding team of Nigerian weekly magazines, The News and Tempo. Recent times, he has served as the Minister of Youth and Sports from 2019 to 2023. Thank you again, sir, for being on the show with us. As usual, we have more questions, more things to discuss than we have time in abundance. So we'll try. I'll do my best to jump straight into it. Okay. Your career spans over 30 years, 3 decades in broadcast media and journalism to start with. Some do not even know that you have, worked with the VOA, the Voice of America, and that's just to mention one of so many. Without even wasting time, I'd just like to quickly jump in. First of all, we start with journalism and broadcasting, which is your core, your core role. Yeah. Looking at broadcasting and journalism back then when you started, and then looking at it now, first of all, how would you say things have changed? What dynamics have become different? What were the things that emanated back then, and what are the things that are important now?
Well, things have really changed. And I think the most important factor has been technology. Because then you have what we call the legacy media, which is fast disappearing, with the ethics that went with journalism. Now, then you had a physical newsroom. Then you had clear gatekeepers, like the spike of the editor. Once you write a story and it is spiked, it cannot go. You have a lot of copy editors and all of that. Now, when you fast forward to where we are now with the Web 1.20, now 3.0 technology, with the advent of the social media, with the media space that is now technology enabled, we have a faster pace of news and current affairs. We have a multifaceted channels of information dissemination. You have an army of journalists right now. When I did study and I did my academic research at Oxford University, my research focused on the new citizen journalism, which we didn't have before. And I did say emphatically then that we're now in a world where everyone is a journalist. What do you need? One smartphone? 1,000 naira to buy some data, a Facebook account or Instagram, and you can post anything. You can wake up the world with a false alarm. And before you could stop it, 15 million people are riding on that false alarm. That's the danger we face. But there's the downside and there's the upside. The upside is that there's a lot of precision. You have citizen journalism joining the process of news gathering and dissemination. You have investigative journalism has better tools to hold those in power accountable, and using technology through media platforms to, promote your brand, educate people. The opportunities are massive. But then there's the downside. The gatekeeping role of journalism, which is the hallmark of journalism, that gate has been broken. And that's why a single post on Twitter could ruin the career of an individual. A single post on Facebook could ruin the fortunes of one of the Fortune 500 companies, with people losing their jobs. But I think that where we are right now, in the 21st century, a technology-enabled world, journalists have better equipment, they are acquiring better skills, and they are more penetrative. And I think that people now do recognize that the role of journalism, whether in private or public life, is critical.
Very true and very interesting. And just to piggyback on that, now it's looking like journalism is a bit of suppressed, so to speak. We're seeing journalists being, I don't want to use the word oppressed, But in some areas, we're seeing journalists being, like Gen Z lingo will say, low-key, silenced when trying to speak up. And the irony is, there now are more mediums for journalists to express themselves.
Right.
However, it's now becoming a challenge because those mediums are now being caged and being gate-kept, so to speak. So how do we marry both now?
Well, let me say this. You know, if you sign up to be a journalist, it's not a bed of roses. You must be ready for a crackdown. You must be ready to be arrested. You must be ready to be interrogated. You must be ready to be challenged, even when your stories are fact. In fact, when you get picked up often, it's because your stories are correct. You must be ready for that. If you come in with a different mindset, then any little invitation, any little attack gets to you. So back up to the Babangida Abacha era. It was worse for us. We went into guerrilla journalism that time. It was virtually impossible to write a story and not get, clamped down upon. Most of the media houses were shut down. The Guardian was shut down. Tell was shut down. The news magazine was shut down. Scores of media editors were declared wanted. Person non grata across the country. People went abroad. That was under the jackboots, under dictatorship. That was worse. That was when Nadeko came up. The current president who funded Nadeko was also sent to jail. And then he escaped to exile. That was when journalism was really under complete assault. And I'm telling you, over the years, with the return to democracy, in 25 years, I've seen the freedoms and liberties of journalists really improve. Across the world, there's no society where the journalist is not an endangered species. But the inoculation you must have is that your stories must have integrity, must be fact-based. And if they take you anywhere, you will still triumph. And I think that's the challenge we face. Once your stories have integrity, they're fact-based, they will still come for you, but then you will still be free because you're speaking. You're the watchdog. You know what a watchdog does?
Of course.
Nothing goes past it.
Nothing goes past it. I will take one more question still on this, the freedom of journalism before we go. There are certain journalists, and I've been one of them, who have spoken to us and have complained about the way and manner, and I must agree with you that yes, journalists would be questioned, journalists will be interrogated based on the authenticity of their stories, and the integrity of what it is they're putting out. But it's not just the fact that journalists are being taken for questioning or being questioned. Some have complained about the way and manner by which some of these journalists have been taken. Some say that in some ways you see some kind of Gestapo approach. Journalists have been taken from their homes at odd times of the day and night, and that doesn't speak.
I do agree. You see, there are exceptions, and those exceptions exist. And when that occurs, we must condemn such Gestapo tactics. You understand? Those exceptions happen, not just in Nigeria, but across the globe. And I think that if that happens here, I see a very swift condemnation. The media brings it to the forefront, and oftentimes we see the security agencies kind of relax or let the person go. This watchdog work of the media is not only for those in power, it's also for ourselves as professionals to make sure that when the state or any organ of the state oversteps its bounds, the Constitution is there. We raise the alarm in one single chorus so that such exceptions are not repeated. And I think we've seen that happen continuously. You have a president, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who has invested massively in the last 3 decades in media industry, in individual professional journalists, and they litter, the media houses and across the country. He's a president that will make sure that the rights of the journalists are respected, there's freedom of press, and where there are exceptions, he will do what is right. The space for the media is democratized in the sense that they're not harassed and they are allowed to perform their role as much as possible. Sometimes too much information is good, but sometimes when you have very little information, it can be extremely dangerous because people do not know what government is doing for them. Government does not know how the people feel about it. People do not know where to go to get what they need in terms of applying themselves to the opportunities of government. So to create that very robust feedback process, also breaking down information into capsules, digestible capsules, for different target groups of the society, you need a solid team. And we've seen a president who places premium on communication, and I think that's the focus.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Sunday Dar, I want to still jump one more time on this, talking about communication between the government and the people now.
Right.
At some point, we had a bit of confusion. I think the generality of Nigerians, and that also made its way into social media, coincidentally. Now, we had the likes of Bayo Onanuga, being a spokesperson to the president. At some point, we also had Ajuri Ngelale, and then we had Ajuri left, and then we had Bola, and then there was this, or we have, and then there was this confusion: who exactly is representing the president, who is speaking on his behalf, and just before you respond to that, there was also the conversation around people talking about the size of the government, but we're having duplication of roles in just one role. How do you put all this together, first of all, and then secondly, really, who is the mouthpiece of the president that we should listen to?
Well, I think for me there was no confusion. You see, I'm right inside there. There's no confusion. It's just a perception out there, and we've tried to correct it a number of times. Because when you look at the definition of the roles, it's pretty clear. In the newsroom, is there a confusion between the work of an editor-in-chief and a sub-editor and a copy editor? And you understand, at the top, I'm even staying at the top now. So Bayo Onanuga, Mr. Bayo Onanuga, a very senior media person, media expert, is the special advisor on information and strategy. Information and strategy. I am the essay on media and public communication. And then we have the essay on public policy communication. That's pretty clear. Then we have the normal SSs, no specialists on media, on print. When you need to just sit down and study the designation of each person. There's for print, there's for broadcast. So there's no confusion. That perception must be shut down completely. Now, I think the number one spokesperson for this government, and for any government for that matter, and you can take example from Trump's America. Yeah. When in his 4 years, clearly, he was the spokesperson all through his Twitter accounts, and when he spoke, you hardly had the voices, or except when you do the press briefing and they meet the press. Yeah. This number one spokesperson for this administration is that man that took the oath on May 29, 2023, that I will serve faithfully. That is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He's the only number one spokesperson. Every other person in that media team were spokespersons after him. And we speak at the appropriate time. So we have a team. We work according to our plan. When it's necessary for Mr. Onanuga to speak, he speaks. But clearly, you know that there's a pecking order, even in journalism. You know that. So you can do the math. So I think we're focused on what we need to do. The assignment really is to make sure that the president's policies and programs are communicated in a very effective manner on a sustained basis with the element of comprehensiveness, currency, and factuality. But also pay attention, move away from that general communication to what we call strategic communication, in which information is targeted at groups for which it is meant. So that confusion about you just put out an information for the whole Nigerians and then they have to start digging which one is for the youth, which one is for the farmers. No, we have that aggregation right now and we're able to do it as a team.
Speaking about the presidency and the president himself, I think it's time for us to shift base a bit from just journalism to the president.
Absolutely.
And the presidency. And there's no better place to start from than the budget itself, which which was just presented a couple of days ago. The 2025 budget, he called it, or somebody said, he christened it the budget of restoration, securing peace, rebuilding prosperity. I know you're not the president, but I would like to ask, what was the rationale behind this theme for this budget?
Well, I think that that budget title or theme, restoring, budget of restoration.
Restoration, yes.
Speaks to peace, speaks to rebuilding the country. From that, you get three key pillars of his administration. The need to ensure we have security. Without security, you can't talk about investment. Without security, you can't talk about agricultural output. Without security, a normal life will be extremely difficult. But also rebuilding the economy. I did say that the president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, did not inherit a perfect country. And I stretch it further, it never inherited a perfect economy. You can back up and look at what the statistics and data was when it took over. So that theme and the centrality of the budget of 2025 proposal speaks to the conviction of Mr. President that this country is beginning to turn the curve, and that he stands firmly behind the decisions he has taken in terms of policy, that he will stay focused, but that he sees a clearer day ahead, and that this budget proposal that he has presented will give us, or will lead us on that critical pathway to rebuilding the economy, securing the peace, and restoring the hopes of Nigeria under the renewed hope agenda.
Now, the budget basically, what I say, was broken down into certain facets, if you like to put it that way.
Absolutely.
Yes, there was security, we had healthcare, we had education, yes. And the other two that were there.
Yes.
And certain amounts, were apportioned to this particular positions. Now, there's an argument that we've seen this before, particularly security. And then the argument again is still insecurity is a challenge in the country.
Let me say, you can't really put a price on security. You can't put a price tag on security. Because it's not about just the money, it's about the military hardware, the software you need. In the 21st century, just look at the security votes of America, of the United Kingdom. Some countries don't even make their defense budgets known. You understand? Staggering. But let me start from it. Look at a 49 trillion budget vis-a-vis a 230 or 40 million. It's still quite low. So let's get it. Those numbers are not like wild. But I also say this is the most ambitious and audacious budget by any president.
Definitely. The president actually did use those words himself.
And when you back up and you look at other countries, the developed countries we kind of want to be like, what has led America on the path that we say it now over the decades is because the president and that country, they've always come up with very ambitious. And what makes it really audacious is that the president has laid down the fundamentals of what he wants to do. Look at the two major policies that came up in terms of fuel subsidy, in terms of the forex. Look at where we are right now. Yes, difficulties, challenges, but they come with statesmanship and statecraft. Presidents are elected to take the tough decisions, just like a surgeon. If he bothers about how sharp the scissors and the scalpel and all of that are, he will never conduct that operation or surgery on cancer or a broken leg. But he does what he needs to do because he knows there will be recovery. And that's what we are at this point. We look at this 49 trillion naira budget. The defense budget, of course, is impressive because security ties it all up. Even for our farmers, now we know that without security, our farmers can stay on the farm and there won't be the output we need. So you take security, huge, about 4.91 trillion. Then you take education, the highest, 7% of the budget by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the highest in the annals of this country. In 2023, the last budget we had was barely 1.6, 1.5 trillion. Now we have a doubling of that amount. That's huge. You look at health, 2 trillion plus. You look at education, 3 trillion plus. And then you look at infrastructure. The infrastructure this time is massive. Infrastructure is 16 trillion. That is massive. And you know what infrastructure? It talks about energy, it talks about hospitals, it talks about road construction that will generate jobs and the rest. So you have 52 to 55% of the 2025 budget proposal presented by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu based on capital, non-debt capital. That is revolutionary. And I think there are other key elements. You look at agriculture, for instance. It's stepping up in that budget from 400,000 metric tons of fertilizer. we're going to 1.2 million metric tons. That is revolutionary, because we often forget that the twin factors that determine agricultural output is our security and also farm input in terms of fertilizer and seedlings. And there's a massive focus on that. You look at sports, for instance. I'm interested in sports. I've never seen a president that loves sports. We're moving from a 2.5 billion naira budget
for sports
to 78 billion naira. Isn't that revolutionary? With all the documents and the policies on ground to just move and implement. So, very ambitious. But you see a president who understands clearly what is needed to rebuild the economy, what is needed to make sure that there's prosperity in this country. You also throw in the tax reforms. Let me tell you right now, our revenue to GDP in Nigeria is the second lowest you can find anywhere in Africa. The OECD countries are there. The highest, what we have is about 1.6, 1.7. Is the second lowest. Go and check the data. Now, so how do you get that up? It starts from reforming your tax system. Now, this president understands the dynamics of a modern economy. The tax system, modernizing our tax system is critical to increasing our revenue base. Now, you have a 49 trillion naira budget. Revenue is 36 or 32, 36 billion coming in. You have a deficit. You have to finance that deficit. Yeah. It comes from a combination of loans, from a combination of the taxes that you've reformed, you widen the tax net, and all of that. So you've seen the clear balancing of priorities, the balancing of decisions and activities that you need to take. And then you see the audacious and very possible scenario of saying, we will reduce our inflation rate from 34% to about 15%. And it did, we provided four cogent reasons or ways we can do that. Now, it's a journey. But right now, we have the roadmap. You've never had a Bola Ahmed Tinubu in the presidency before. You've never had, that's why you've never had this kind of budget proposal. With a Bola Ahmed Tinubu, you expect something this audacious. And you back up to when he was governor of Lagos State. I agree. It was ambitious, it was audacious. When he came up with the 25-year master plan for Lagos State, or 20-year, nobody gave it a shot.
Well, I totally agree with that.
And now it's a new day in Lagos.
I totally agree on that, Dr. Dari. Well, talking about Lagos will be a conversation for another day.
Absolutely.
And while there are those who have praised him for turning Lagos into what it is, with that 25-year roadmap, there are some who have still criticized, saying Lagos is not the entirety of Nigeria. You know
the theory about sampling?
Something in the Bible.
About sampling.
Sampling. Okay,
if you want to sample the effectiveness of something,
yeah.
You don't come to Lagos and say 20 million people must take your samples. You understand? You get about 20 people to drink the Coke and see whether they like it, and you work out the ratio. So Lagos stands at the 5th or the 4th largest economy.
Yeah, 4th largest.
Lagos has the largest population in this country. Running Lagos State, administering Lagos State is massive. The experience you have being in charge of Lagos State is instructive and massive. So we cannot dismiss that experience and what he did. That's one. Two, you take the gap between when he was governor of Lagos State and when he became president. He wasn't just sitting at home sipping coffee. There's no politician in this country today who spread himself out so much across the country, not just politically, but also economic. It was a strong voice for Nigerian economy. It was a strong voice for the political space and for democracy in this country. It was a strong voice for several other sectors. And for the first time ever, I must say this, you have somebody from the progressive rank, from the opposition rank, really coming out. Somebody who has gone through the crucible of political struggle, the crucible of managing resources for a huge population, rising up to become the president of the country. So I think that's important. That experience comes in handy at a time like this.
Dr. Sunday Dar, just before we go on a quick break, I was going to ask about funding of the budget. Now, from my knowledge of economics, most times budgets are funded through revenue and yes, revenue and loans, borrowing.
Right.
And then there's a school of thought that believes that Nigeria has borrowed enough. And that we shouldn't go further into that. But before you respond to that question, we'd like to take a very quick break. We're still speaking to Dr. Sunday Dar. He is the Special Advisor, Media and Public Communications, and of course the spokesperson to Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I would also like to add that Dr. Sunday Dar is a Commander of the Order of the Niger, CON, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, he also was Honorable Minister of Youth and Sports. We'll take a quick break. This is News Central's exclusive, and when we come back, this exclusive interview shall continue.
Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just a conversation starter, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting, and this is where it begins, right here at News Central TV, with stories that put Africa first.
Thank you for staying with us. This is still NC exclusive, or News Central exclusive, if you like to call it that. My name is Bernard Akede, and I am honored once again to be in the presence of Dr. Sunday Dar. Dr. Sunday Dar is a Special Advisor, Media and Public Communications, and spokesperson to Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, also former Minister of Youth and Sports. Dr. Sunday Dar, thank you for your patience, and thank you for still sitting with us.
Thank you, News Central.
All right. Now, very quickly, with the little time that we have left, before we went on break, I was talking about how budgets are being funded, and of course, through revenue and through loans. And I was saying that there's a school of thought that believes that Nigeria should lean a lot more to revenue than to loans, you know, because the belief is that we have borrowed a lot. Now, to the ordinary Nigerian on the streets, all they hear is you are borrowing money, so your pocket is getting fatter, meaning that you have to pay back these monies.
Over time.
Can you break it down to the ordinary Nigerian? Is it dangerous that we are still going to have to fund this new budget with a lot of loans? And how dangerous or how impactful are these loans to the ordinary Nigerian on the streets?
Well, my takeoff point will be the 2025 budget proposal presented by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, because in that budget you find quite a number of answers. When you have such an ambitious budget and you have the numbers, in that same budget you have answers being given to how do we fund this budget. We saw there the 2023, 2024 budget review. Talked about the budget, talked about where we are at 75%. We've overshot the revenue. So how do you fund the budget? Like you said, from revenue. You have the 49 trillion, you have the 36 revenue target, you have the shortfall that will be funded from loans, but also that will be funded from the revenue. But I think the most important thing out there, this president, almost 2 months ago, put forward 4 tax reform bills prior to the budget coming up. Because the tax reform bills, if they are passed, will not only reform and modernize our tax system, but will also increase the revenue that comes in. Right now, this country numbers are among one of the, that's why our revenue to GDP is second to the last when you look at the countries in Africa. And that's because our tax system is weak. The tax base is weak. So many people that should pay taxes are not paying. And it can be different because you can benchmark with other countries. So you have a tax bill, reform bill already in place. If that is eventually passed, you know what that means. There's going to be a jump in our revenue. And perhaps the loans we will take will not even be as much because there's going to be a balancing act. You also look at the effort the government has made so far, paying down our debts. In the past, we're spending 91%. Now it's down to 68%. Now, is there any country in the world that is developing, that is developed, that does not take loans? By the very essence of development and political economy around it, the country will need to get financing through loans. And it's a combination. So it just depends on the ratio. But a 49 trillion, and we're already raising 36 trillion to fund it. That's massive, the loan gap. So successive governments take loans. I think what matters is the application of those loans. What do you use those loans for? When you look at the highest debtor countries in the world today, the first 14, Nigeria is not there. Yet among those 14, there are countries we think are the best in the world. Then you sit back and look at the tax burden and the tax system in America, in the UK, in Canada, in a few other countries. The tax system is very advanced. The tax system is a net that captures virtually everyone that should pay, and we're trying to get to that level. So I think that Nigerians need not worry. This president will ensure that the loans we use are applied in such a way that it benefits the people. Three key elements of the 2025 budget proposal. Human capital, a massive injection of funds into human capital development. Then you look at capital development, 16 trillion naira, never before. And when you break it down, you know, the details are more exciting. You look at the healthcare centers, you look at the money that will be spent to bring in medication, which is costing so much money. You look at the money spent on agriculture. Then you begin to see that you have a budget proposal that strikes at the heart of the critical things that matter: human capital, capital development, education. This president has said it repeatedly, that the only weapon against poverty is education. And he has lived true to that vision in this budget with what we have. 7% of Nigeria's budget going to education, the very first time ever.
Okay, so now I would like to take your word for it. By this time next year, 2025, based on this budget and how you have broken it down and explained that it truly is a budget, or will be a budget of restoration, yeah, and Nigerians will be quite expectant. What would you, if you look into your crystal ball now, what would you say, or where would you say Nigeria will be, or Nigerians will be by this time next year, based on this budget?
Well, first, I don't have a crystal ball.
Okay.
But I have a reality check. Okay. And the reality check starts from when you look at where we are now, we're looking at just 18 months. 18 months. We have a president elected for 4 years. So we're just barely halfway. What's important, if you track the reforms brought on by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, you can start to see some impact. Our foreign reserves, from a negative, we're at 42 billion. It helps us to absorb the shocks. That is building the resilience of the economy. Okay. Dollar price has also gone down. So I see the cup half full, and that's the way we should see it, that progressively we're beginning to turn the curve. We're seeing these policies yielding fruit. Now, our local refining capacity is necking up to 51 or thereabouts from Dangote, the 7 or 8 modular refineries. If we keep that track going, by the first half, June of next year, our refining capacity will have shot up to about 65%. What does that mean? A drop in the PMS. Yeah. Right now, we're witnessing a drop right now. We have 100 naira, 200 naira, 300 naira, coming down from the PMS.
I think 20 naira, 30 naira is what you're saying.
No, Dangote came to 899 naira from 1,100 naira.
Well,
so we're seeing, you see, it's the market forces.
Yes, it is.
It's the market forces. So the prices will fluctuate.
So still, how can ordinary Nigerians track this progress? So, because first of all, for one to have confidence in the government, they need to actually track, you know, the fact that the government is saying there is progress being made. So there's not just the numbers; they need to see it in reality.
There's the tracking, then there's also the beneficiary aspect. The tracking is part of what I'm doing, and part of what we do consistently through the normal media channels, through the social media. We do a lot of work in also local languages. We're going to put the facts out there. But then, you see, Nigerians must also step up to apply themselves to these opportunities. The taste of the pudding is in the eating. So if government says you can benefit from this program, this is the data, this is the process you need to go through without any shortcuts, Nigerians must apply themselves to it. Like they say, you don't expect to win a race if you don't start the race or join the race. And I think that the appeal right now is that you have a president that is concerned about development of human capital, a president that is concerned about every single Nigerian, a president that knows that he has taken tough decisions because they are necessary and Nigerians are sacrificing and passing through difficulties, but who has also put out options, initiatives, and proposals that will help us pass through this stage. And like you said, he believes that together with him, with every civil servant playing his role, with every Nigerian playing his role, with the private sector playing their role, and with government making sure they stay through to the blueprint of what he has put forward, that this country can be better.
Now, passing information to the people, there has been, criticisms of the National Orientation Agency, largely, in terms of, you're laughing before even the question comes out, before pushing, certain information.
Right.
What exactly is happening there? Because again, you have read out a whole lot of things that the government has been doing,
right.
Improvements, and based on what you've said, the numbers are looking very positive.
Right.
But it seems that the angle, the agency that is supposed to be pushing us some of this information, doesn't seem to be doing that.
Well,
totally
I think that what we have right now is something that is very progressive and dynamic. We have a new DG. We've seen quite a number of efforts he has put in place, one of which for me is most critical, is what he calls the explainer. What the explainer does is that it takes a policy or initiative of government and tries to explain it in total, tries to capsulize it such that people really understand it. But I think that with more resources, they can do more and faster, because it's about scalability. How quickly do you get this information out? How quickly do people benefit from them? Without trying to defend the NOA, I think the NOA under this administration is refocused. We have a core journalist who is also a public analyst in charge, Larry Onilu. We've seen the efforts he's made. And then I think ultimately what you need to see, which we built a synergy, the information ministry, the agencies of FRCN, the NOA, the presidential media team, there's a synergy we've built up now to make sure that we create a content chamber that is unique, that is beneficial, and that can be cascaded down to the Nigerian citizen. Okay,
but then now the latest crime experience and security perception survey, CESPS, conducted by the National Bureau of Statistics, has revealed alarming figures, on the state of crime in Nigeria. Still, maybe not from those numbers, but that the state of crime, and insecurity is still quite challenging and still quite alarming.
Well, no country is devoid of crimes. In fact, the most violent crimes take place in the developed countries we love to celebrate. A young boy of 16 goes into a school and wipes out 32 kids, or 40, or 16. On a constant basis. In America, for instance, you have at least 14 cases like that in 1 year. Isn't that a crime? Have you ever had something like that in this country? That's one. So when you talk about it, you must look at it from an holistic aspect. Yeah, do we have challenges about banditry and kidnapping? Yes. But there are other higher level crimes that we don't have in this country. People can still drive on the roads and still get home at 12 midnight. In most cities in this country. So we must appreciate that there's a level of security in this country. Do we have a perfect situation? No. Are there challenges? Absolutely. Is this government working earnestly through its security agencies to make sure that these crimes are reduced? Yes. But there's no silver bullet when it comes to crimes, when it comes to kidnapping, banditry. There's no silver bullet. Even countries where you think the government provides everything, you still have violent crimes. You still have kidnappings. You still have attacks. So I think that what is important is that when you talk about security, the value chain also speaks about kinetic and non-kinetic, but also talks about the role of the citizen. In America, for instance, you find out that your neighbor across the street, when he notices something going on that is wrong from the flat across the street, citizen informant is able to provide that information. That kind of information, community policing, community information. So while the government has a role to, pay the officers, get the vehicles, provide the guns and the rest, it cannot happen. That effective security cordon we need cannot happen in the absence of our citizens not being vigilant and not providing critical information in a timely fashion that can aid the work of the security agents.
Dr. Darian, still speaking about neighbors, as we gradually wind this down, we're seeing certain changes in terms of relationship to other African countries, particularly those ones that seem to be, maybe pulling out of some of the regional bodies, and largely in the Sahel region.
Right, right.
And that is one of the regions where we see a lot of insecurity challenge, or security challenges, rather.
Yes.
How is our relationship, Nigeria's relationship with some of these countries? How strong is it now in terms of security as we battle, these challenges?
I think that when you look at the borders of Nigeria, one of the largest borders ever, and it's always a constant challenge. Even America is struggling with its borders. That's why President Trump wants to build the wall, across America. So America, Homeland Security, is struggling with its borders. That's even a more defined border territory. The border territory we inherited as a country from our colonial masters were not defined, extremely porous across several countries. So that is an abiding challenge. That's one. Two, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the current chairman of ECOWAS. And when the 66th extraordinary session, we had almost all the presidents. Of course, we did not get the president of Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali. But we also saw the chairman of ECOWAS saying, we will step down for now the provisions of Article 91 that says they should leave completely come January 29th, and provided a window of 6 months to Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger to say, it's important, where what binds us together is not just our geography and physical. It's because we're Africans and we belong to this sub-regional group. So I think that there's no substitute for democracy. We've seen what the difference is. And for ECOWAS to say we're giving this country 6 more months, it shows, the African Brotherhood. It also shows that we have a chairman who is willing to bring back those that have left. Because when they come in, we're able to build a more robust security, a more robust economy. Because when they go away, the negative impact will be on the people. Because, there's cross-border trade.
Yes. There's
intermarriages. There are families. It's just massive. It's just beyond the political. It goes deep down. And we hope that in 6 months, we're going to have a turnaround. Either they return back to the sub-judicial body, or we get a definite plan of election that returns power. The president has said that there's nothing like constitutional rule, which is democracy.
And Dr. Sunday Dar, as we conclude this, I would like to take a 1 minute or 1 minute 30 seconds take on youth development in Nigeria. You were formerly the Minister for Youth and Sports, and sadly, there's still complaints around out-of-school children, unemployment of the Nigerian youth, and youthful population generally. What's your take on this, and how do you see the future of the Nigerian youth?
Well, let me take it from your last comment. I think the future of Nigerian youth is bright, not necessarily because of government or what government is doing, but I think we're lucky to have a youth demography that is huge. It's an engine room for development for any country, more so Nigeria at a time like this. But as unit minister, I saw the broad spectrum of the talents, the potential, the skills of our youth. It's amazing. And I think that a greater investment in our youth is the future. We've seen an effort on the part of government to invest in our youth through providing them funds to become entrepreneurs, because the key word is making them wealth creators. not necessarily waiting for government jobs. They're not there. That's one. Two, make them entrepreneurs. We've also seen an attempt to bring them on board. Inclusivity. Under this administration, we have seen that being practicalized. Under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, key positions going to young people, assignments given to them. They're involved in explaining the policies. They're involved in running agencies. And I think that the establishment of the first ever youth entrepreneurship bank being funded by the AFDB, $100 million to start with, Nigeria will counterpart it, will also help. Because our youth are there, apart from education, they need funding for education. They need funds to develop their skills. They need funds to build their businesses. And when you look at it, they become wealth creators. They also employ people. They also pay taxes and be part of Nigeria's robust economy. I think we're on that part. Again, scalability. If you have 10 million youths waiting for opportunities, you help just 100,000, you have not started. We need more funds from AFDB, from the federal government, from the private sector. Let's scale up our investment in our youth.
Wow. I want to say thank you so much for honoring our invitation. And I do hope certainly that we can get another, another chance, other times with you where we can discuss more of this. If you've missed the show, or you've absolutely missed nothing, you can go onto our social media platforms and get back most of what we have done here with Dr. Sunday Dar. My name is Bernard Akede. Thank you so much for joining us on this News Central exclusive edition. And we hope that you join us again on another edition of News Central Exclusive. Thank you so much.